All right, good to have you with us as we head up to 13 minutes away from 8 o'clock. It's a Thursday edition of the South African Morning. I'm Gareth Edwards. Good to be with you this morning. Now, the advent of COVID-19 over a year ago has seen a number of behavioural changes taking place. We've now become accustomed, haven't we, to sharing our contact details almost everywhere we go outside of our own houses. We're asked to provide our contact details on medical questionnaires, restaurants, hotels and stores, and comply without much thought. But what happens when we start to get spammed as a result of that? Well, let's speak to somebody who knows about this a lot more than I do. It's a data protection attorney, Mark Heyink from Michalsons Attorneys, joining us from Cape Town. Mike, good morning. Mark, good morning to you. The reason I was hoping to speak to an expert like you, I won't give the name of the store, but I will paint the scenario very quickly. Went to a furniture store, never been there before, never Googled them. They don't have my email address. They don't have my telephone number. I didn't even buy anything from the store. But what I did have to do, Mark Heyink, is fill in a COVID-19 questionnaire. Within 24 hours, I was getting emails, and I was getting phone calls, and I was getting SMSs. That can't surely be right.
No, indeed, Gareth, it's not right. Good morning to you and to your viewers. You know, as you said earlier on, POPI, it's already in effect. Remember that the Act is there, and we have these rights. So the fact that it is coming into, or rather that the regulator will actually have enforcement powers from the 1st of July doesn't mean to say that you don't have these rights already. And essentially what that means is that the information can only be used, your personal information can only be used for a stated purpose, or if there is some other justification which would allow it to be used. And the processors of information, when they have that information, of course, they are not entitled to just share that information, particularly where you see, and very often this is the case, you see it on websites, etc., where they expressly say we will not share this information. But even if they don't, they can only use the information for the purpose for which it was provided. So when you go into a restaurant or a store, and you're providing that information, it is really to allow that entity to get back to you should they detect that there has been a COVID incident, etc. So that's the purpose, and they cannot go outside of that purpose. So when we look at direct marketing, there is a provision in the Act which deals with direct marketing, and in that instance, you can direct market your customers as long as you allow them the opportunity to opt out. But that does not mean to say that simply because you were in a store that you were a customer. That customer relationship is obviously far deeper than that. And in those circumstances, if your information that is being provided for COVID purposes is being provided to direct market you, clearly that is incorrect, and you probably, unless you have consented, and your consent has to be expressed, so it's not something that they could have possibly put on a form to say, we will use your information for direct marketing. You must consent directly to that. And then, of course, one of the things that happens is that with direct marketing, part of what we are seeing is that the information is very useful. This information is fresh. It's people are giving their information at that time. So that if that information is being sold, and there are unscrupulous direct marketers out there, or data brokers that provide the information to direct marketers, that is very valuable. So that's how it happens. It's not lawful. And, you know, part of what is required in terms of the Act is that wherever you are dealing with data, personal data, you have an obligation to actually secure that data, both with technological and organizational mechanisms.
Mark, how do we stop it? How do we stop this from happening? I mean, obviously we haven't consented to our information on a COVID form being sold off or used in any way, shape or form. How do we stop something like this? I've got about a minute, maybe 2 minutes left with you, Mark. So very quickly, how do we stop this from happening, and how does someone who it's happened to, how do they prove this is how the information was gotten?
Well, to answer your first question, one must be careful to whom you provide your information and under what circumstances. And as you correctly said, that's a bit difficult because we are asked for this information, and we in good faith give that information because it's important that we can be contacted if there is a COVID outbreak. But the remedies really are not that easy, in the sense it is difficult to prove that the information has now been unlawfully provided to a third party for direct marketing purposes. But if you suspect that there is a problem, you should actually report it to the information regulator. And the information regulator is obliged, in terms of its function, to investigate that. If, in fact, there are two things that could have gone wrong. First of all, the information could have been sold. Alternatively, there could have been a breach in the information security, and that could even be simply papers being left, and somebody being able to very easily these days take photographs of
Yeah, it's such a problem, isn't it? Because, I mean, you got your cell phone number, an ID number, just sitting there on an open piece of paper for the public to see. I just wanted to see what an expert has to say about this, but I think for all of those watching, I think it's been a big help. Mark Heyink from Michalsons Attorneys, I appreciate this as well, about our information having to be shared because of COVID, and now we're getting spam SMSs and calls. I appreciate your time, Mark, in speaking to us this morning. I think it's a big issue. I'd actually like to hear from people on Twitter about this.